Welcome to As Built, the podcast about architecture firms and buildings and how both get built. I'm your host, Brian Jones. My guest today is Eli Hoisington, co CEO at HOK. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Now that you're in the role of co CEO, how did your experience working up through HOK impact your view of leadership?
Great question. I think I was really fortunate that in my time here, which is now 20 years, it's kind of hard to believe actually sometimes to look up and say I've been here at HOK for 20. I had a really wide and varied experience. I started as a technical architect, really on the junior staff level, working as a project architect with a focus on one type of building. And then I transitioned pretty quickly after getting to know some people in New York studio into design, which was fantastic. It was just an opportunity that came by. And then went into project leadership. Then intriguingly got asked to go to St. Louis to take on an office leadership level, and now finally in a firm-wide leadership. So I've kind of had the chance to do a little bit of everything, both from technical field work, CA, designing sort of on my own, and then with teams, and then going into management. So I think that really that breadth of experience, and then also working across lots of different geographies, gave me a chance to look at anything that comes into the CEO job through a bunch of different filters. So I don't just sort of when I get a challenge or something we have to think about for the firm, which is really that leadership charge, right? I take a breath and I think about, okay, how would I tackle that for a young PA? How would I tackle it for someone who's just taken over a new studio? How would I tackle that for a designer or for a marketer? And I think that really helps me, having played all those roles, not just in my career, but at HOK, to sort of tackle anything that comes at me with a pretty open mindset, which is unique. And I really think that's helped me.
So, speaking of the global practice, how do you nurture and promote design across the organization, across so many time zones?
Sure, that's a great question. I think there's two ways to answer that question. There's a tactical way we do it, and then there's sort of the strategic thinking about how you organize a firm, as large as ours. So the tactics are easier, right? We have a design board and that covers every geography and every office. We try and meet at a time which is good for everybody. So sort of midday tends to work. We do emerging talent and interior design gatherings. So we identify through that first board, we identify lots of young people and talent and basically who's the next generation. And then we have them get together, um, both globally and by region. So they get to know each other. So like in the middle part of the country, we'll get Texas, Chicago, and St. Louis and Kansas City, and now Denver together. And so those people get to know each other and then really talk about design. We do internal design competitions. That's relatively new post-COVID because it's become a place to really foster conversations and theoretical design and really advance that. We got a huge turnout for that this last time we did it, which is fantastic. And then the last piece tactically is the sort of autonomy we create for our studio leaders. So, if design is really sort of predicated or singular voice, I don't think you get the benefit of really collaborative and creative design process. So we really, really want the design leaders around the firm to have their autonomy. They're subject to that design board, right? We're trying to have a critical discussion when we look at the work, but to have that autonomous voice is really good. So those are kind of the tactics we use. Strategically, the way that we've looked at this company, it's built around interdisciplinary design. And I think interdisciplinary design does two things. It inherently creates better and more thoughtful, holistic design solutions for our clients and our communities. And it does that because you bring all these different voices together, right? And you sort of allow the engineers and the interiors and the architects and the planners, you kind of get in this interesting mosh pit, right? And we really have those folks in house. And what it does is it often will create this wonderful environment where you challenge preconceptions. So someone will say, oh, I think this is the way we're going to design the whole project. And then you'll have someone on the other side of the table say, well, did you look at it this way, that way, or the other way? Or even just propose a different concept. So that interdisciplinary design up front means that the project doesn't get cooked as an idea for well too into conception before you start bringing other voices in. So you're hearing a theme about collaboration and kind of how I kind of view the practice. It's easy to say, it's harder to do, particularly when you have a lot of strong egos and people who are incredibly creative folks. But that's kind of the philosophy that we're after here.
So, To that end, how do you facilitate that sharing of knowledge across the organization? You talked about the gatherings that you have and sort of the way that you bring people together, but on a day-to-day basis, how does that
Mhm.
come to life?
Yeah, day to day, again, there's sort of the tactics and how we think about leadership. So tactically, we have all the tools a lot of companies have nowadays, and the internet. We have our internal net. We have our external communications. We have an incredible comms group who helps us roll out and think about how we do things and messaging, and that's really important for us, both internal and external. There's kind of a really beautifully elegant, simple way that I think is important for our communication, which is you got to go to the studios and you got to sit and meet and talk to people, beyond just, sort of the talking heads or the email. So we do all of that, right? We send out regular emails and updates. We also do videos where we can actually, people can see us and relate to us. And then we go to the studios. Susan and I, she's a phenomenal partner. It's with 28 offices. It's great
Wow.
that we can divide and conquer. So we divide up where we go every year and how we visit people. And then we instituted a new thing this year, which got enormous. We actually like broke our
Mhm.
Teams channel. We actually, I didn't know you could max out Teams, but we figured out we could. We
Oh,
did an open
wow.
town hall for the first time, I think, in HOK's history, where we just sat and we said, "All right, you have access to the two of us." Obviously, it needed to be moderated, but that gave people a chance from anywhere in the company to dial in and say, "I've got a question about this. What are you doing?" So it's a mix of all those things, and it varies depending on schedule and what our capacity is, but you got to just talk to people. Yeah, I think the more detached you get, I think, from a leadership role into sort of the day to day, I'm just doing the grind, and you lose touch with
Mhm.
talking to individuals. I think the further you get away from good communication.
So, speaking of communication, there's a trend within the industry to figure out how mentorship will evolve, and like how have you helped build up mentorship within the firm, and has it evolved for HOK?
Sure. I'd love to tell you that I did anything tied to mentorship, and I would be lying if I did. The firm believes in it strongly. There's some really, really cool champions around our practice who believe in it and have really put a lot of structure to it. So, we have firm wide mentorship. Another theme, maybe through the answers you're hearing, Brian, is we learned that the geographies didn't matter 3 years ago, right? Sometime in 2020, when COVID first came around, we made a decision as an executive committee, the five of us at the time, six of us at the time. We said we're shutting all the offices down.
Wow.
Never done it before. We just called up and then we told everybody we're closing because
Sure.
we didn't know, right? No one knew. And we were forced to figure out how to work in a different way. And what's come out of that are things like our firm-wide mentorship, where we can connect a leader in New York with somebody in Austin and they mentor each other. It's fantastic, right? So you're no longer confined to your studio or your immediate circle. And to be honest, I was surprised. I was surprised how well we transitioned in COVID. And I've been surprised along the way about how natural this has gone. And like the firm mentorship's a hit. That layers on top of mentorship we do in the office. We do one-on-ones, and each studio kind of has then underneath those kind of two general ways we do things. They have individual mentorships programs they do in their studios, whether it be something like a high school outreach or specific college partnerships that they do. Um, so yeah, we believe in it fully. Coming back to me personally, did I do anything? No. I mean, for me, the biggest issue is where do you find time to do it? It's hugely important. So yeah, I need to create time and space to do it myself more often.
So, with the increase of information that designer professionals must make use of, what role does technology play in that?
Uh, this could be a whole
Yeah.
like half an hour session, right? We could talk about technology. Um, yeah, I think technology is massively important. I was probably the last generation in my college and probably in the profession that still drew by hand, right? I did my sort of the anyone who's listening who knows the olden days, I drew my thesis on ink and mylar, which was great fun. Um, to know that I could do that, right? And then I transitioned my first job in school. I roll in and I'm in the digital world. I was like, literally, that was the break. Um, so technology has expanded and grown, and it plays a huge, huge role in what we do. For me, technology is actually a cautionary tale because, and I think it's skewed by the fact of sort of how it came through the world. It can sort of be seductive as an end to itself. They're so powerful. There's so many things in technology. Look at virtual reality, which we were early adopters of, augmented reality, which a lot of people are kind of having a fun time with, and now AI. It's just you start to get into understanding what its possibilities are, and it feels as though it could be just this great solution to just about anything. But what each technology does is it has its own set of rules, right? How it was created, and then what it can do. And so if you're not careful, you can start to have an output, like your design ideas, your process begin to be driven by the technology itself versus by you, by what you're trying to solve. And I've seen that in all of those different technologies. So I think it's amazing. We use all those different technologies. We invest heavily in research to find out how to use them. But I would caution anyone to say, don't get too seduced by it. Know that sometimes just a good old fashioned roller trace and a fat pen, or as some of my partners do, just grab some scissors and some cardboard. Pretty cool. Have the tool be defined by your output, not the other way around.
So, as I understand it, you still maintain active projects. And how do you balance the responsibilities of your leadership role with the role of design in a building?
Yeah, boy, you had a great string of questions today for this podcast. Um, so in my theme of being honest, it's a huge challenge. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it's easy, or create the impression that when you step into a broader role like this, that it just is natural. It's not. I do believe fully though that if I'm going to be successful as a CEO of a design practice, I need to be close to the work. So I've really limited what I involve myself in, or I didn't have to before, right? Anything that would come into the studio. Previously, my bandwidth would be, okay, I need the right kind of teams, I need the right kind of people, and I just
Sure.
need to manage that schedule. I really can't do that. So I pick a couple of projects. I'm really quite selective in what I engage my time in that, like really doing the work role. Two is having a co-CEO. I can't thank or praise Susan enough because she feels we're kind of yin and yang, which makes us work so well together. We kind of finish each other's sentences because we look at it almost often from opposing points of view, and we work so well together. So she picks up so much ground and vice versa, right? I think if it was just one of us,
Yeah.
this question would be even harder, to be quite honest. And then three, it forced my hand. And I think a lot of design leaders will like say this to you, right? There's a point where you have to say, I can't do it all anymore. And maybe this goes back to your mentorship. Maybe I am doing some mentorship more than I thought, but I have a group of folks within my local studio who are just enormously talented, and went out and actually sought out a few more people to add to the group who are going to be able to do the work. You know, um, I love it, but frankly, it's their time now, right? It's their chance, and so the hardest thing is just knowing that you got to step away from that because your instinct is like, I want to hold on to it. And so I think those three things together, I can't say I got it figured out yet. I'm still, week by week, I kind of look at my calendar. I'm like, all right, how am I going to do all the things I need to do? But I'm getting there. I'm getting there slowly.
So the last one's kind of a big one, which is, with issues of sustainability at the top of mind for the world, how is this
Mhm.
impacting and changing the firm?
Yeah, great question. Given the fact that it's about 72 degrees
Yep,
outside at the end of
exactly.
February, so it's a apropos question. Um, Sustainability for us has always been core to who we are, and I think we've made a recent effort to ask ourselves a question. Right, we kind of wrote the book, like literally, if you go back and to sort of as this was becoming a dominant part of possession, dominant part of the profession. We were out in front writing sort of a guidebook and sort of defined how this was happening. Thankfully, modern building codes are starting to push ahead. Things are catching up where that it's becoming good practice in the norm now. So the question really is, what's next? I'm going to tell you my personal answer, and how I see a change in the firm because I think we could look at a number of things. Um, I think, particularly tied to sustainability, the deep engineering and tied to our resilient strategies is probably something we're going to spend more time about. Um, I think the energy and water conservation, those kinds of things are incredibly important, but I don't think we've defined what it means to be resilient. Um, we've had a couple of examples recently that have been really interesting. We had a weather system that came through, and I think it was 50 miles wide, came through St. Louis, and it dumped something like 10 inches of rain overnight. And I remember because I was supposed to be on a trip to Kansas City, and thankfully I checked the news at 5 in the morning, and the highway was underwater. There was cars floating down the highway. But if you went 50 miles north or 50 miles south, you didn't see that. So you get these kind of crazy micro events. And a couple of our projects have been the first buildings that recover and the first ones back online, which in this modern world becomes really important, right? As you get these kind of events. So sustaining isn't just like how do we reduce our footprint, which is super important. It's how do we not incur an enormous burden on the systems we live in to then get back up and running again. How do we weather these new events we're dealing with? I think that's important. King wellness and equity are hugely important now as part of a sustainable strategy, right? Because you're stretching the word sustainable. It's not just a one liner. And I see it in my life. I see in others' life. I mean, being well and healthy and the ability to be part of the communities and buildings we work in, we can affect that through design. So yeah, how is it changing the firm? Well, we have to put people who in our firm who are experts at this, right? Some of us, like we design buildings, we think about it, but you really need thoughtful people um, who wake up every day and this is what they think about. It's not a perfect science yet, but I believe this is where we're going, which is if, for your viewers won't see my hands. It's like if sustainability was defined this much, that bandwidth is going to grow. We need to bring all these other layers into and on top of what is commonly known as sustainability for us to be successful.
Really want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to share insights with me and our listeners. Until next time, this has been Espen.